Well, thanks guys for being here. Really appreciate it. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Cameron Embers. So I own Emberly Digital, which is a digital solutions company. We basically do a lot of like software development, a lot of marketing, all that sort of thing. So we have been like right in the middle of everything that has been impacted by AI. This is my biggest flex for the day, by the way. I have been an AI hipster, so I've been into AI like before it was cool. Back in 2017, I did a talk for the Chamber of Commerce where I basically like sort of talked about what was coming down the pipeline AI-wise to a bunch of business leaders. It was mostly a lot of old guys, and that talk was so poorly received. It was the worst talk I've ever done in my life. One of them on his way out said, "I hope I'm dead before any of this stuff happens," and he left. I was like, whoa. So, there's definitely a lot of like reaction to AI, right? Obviously, like a lot of people I've been programming my whole life. I started programming when I was 10 years old. I did my first paid project when I was 14. Manipulating code has been a large part of how I've actually earned money, how I've had status in the world, how I've been able to do stuff. And so it is very interesting to kind of look forward into this world where it's like, wow, a lot of these industries are being impacted. There was, if you think back a few years, there was sort of this whole like, oh, what happens when self-driving cars become a thing and truckers get replaced and all that. That was really the thing. We didn't really expect that the knowledge workers would be replaced a little faster than the truck drivers, right? But as it turns out, you can probabilistically replace a moderately okay knowledge worker faster than you can replace a moderately good truck driver. And part of the reason for that is because, if you have AI copywriting generated, it might be 90% good and you can change a few things. There's no risk with that 10% that's not very good, right? You can just like read it and change it. And but then with truck driving, you have a little bit of risk of 1% margin of error. You can crash and you can kill somebody. So it's a very different and interesting situation. So basically what I want to talk about today, like every business owner is asking the question of like, oh no, what do I do? Like technology is changing really fast and I don't want to get left behind. I don't want to be a dinosaur. I want to get ahead and be on the cutting edge. I want to be able to use these new tools. I don't actually know what's out there. So what I want to basically do, because I and my team, it's a small team, it's 11 total people. They're all full-time in-house. And we work with AI every single day. We almost always have an AI window up, or we're integrating with some sort of AI platform, or we are using some sort of AI tool or whatever to do just about everything at this point. Almost none of our final products are done by AI. There's usually at this point, there's a human step of tweaking or refining, or AI is just used for the concept generation, or we're using AI as a fundamental part of getting the output, but there's a lot of different systems sort of integrated together. But we're using AI in so many different ways. And so I just wanted to talk about like what I know about it and just be as helpful as I possibly can to you guys. So I'm going to go through a few things. First off, I want to talk a little bit about like what AI is, what it's not from a programmer's perspective, so that you have a fundamental understanding of how it actually works. I want to talk about some common tools that you guys can use and should at least be aware of to have conversations with people. Then I've broken down all the questions that we got were really great. Any one of those questions, we could spend weeks working on the solution to that. So I broke them down into categories and gave some examples. And I have some like solution-ish stuff and some general principles for how to use AI. So the first thing I will say is that AI is a pretty insane term. AI is like such a buzzword now. It's like a condiment, right? Where you could like just sprinkle a little AI on something and VCs will just like pour money on it. It's a whole thing. So the idea of AI is really like artificial intelligence, right? But artificial intelligence is like this impossible term to actually identify what that means, right? Everybody talks about AGI. Oh, when are we going to experience AGI, artificial general intelligence? Nobody really agrees on what the definition of that is. So fundamentally, AI and AGI and all that sort of thing, they're very nebulous, useless terms. I actually like the term GPE, which I've coined, General Pattern Extrapolator. An AI system is fundamentally just really good at probabilistically extrapolating patterns from other patterns. It looks at a bunch of patterns, it figures out what those patterns do and how they work, and it extrapolates those patterns. And so that's fundamentally, kind of what is going on. So I think one thing that I heard the other day that I thought was really useful, particularly for business owners trying to figure out what's going on with AI, AI is a solution in search of a problem, right? So, and this is something that Silicon Valley continues to do time and time again. They create these new solutions and then they sort of sell them to you, to the world, to everybody as like, oh, this is the solution for like everything, right? They did that with big data. So we worked on the big data, like a big data conference a few years back when big data was like the term. Does anyone remember that buzzword? It was like huge. And that conference, that we built a whole software for so people could register events and all this sort of thing. And we're like, wow, this is the next big thing. It's dead because it was a hype. It was a hype thing, right? AI is also going to be a hype moment, right? We're in the middle of this AI hype moment, but the fundamental technology is going to change the world, probably similar to the way that the iPhone changed the world or computers changed the world, right? It's just we are sort of using this term to talk about a lot of different stuff, and we're categorizing it all together. So I wanted to talk about like the types of AI. So there's actually a lot of different types of like artificial intelligence. So there's machine learning, which is basically like computers learn from data without explicitly being programmed to do that. So again, extrapolation, right? They're taking a bunch of data and they're extrapolating beyond what their programming rule sets tell them to do. Deep learning, that's like the use of artificial neural networks. So it's a bunch of layers of neural networks that analyze data. Generative AI, like obviously everybody's probably familiar with like DALL-E and Midjourney and stuff like that. So those are all, and Google's VO and all that. Those are generative AI platforms, but there's a lot of subsets of generative AI. Large language models. So that's like ChatGPT and Gemini and all the things that we're used to like interacting with on a regular basis. Those are like LLMs or large language models. So they consume human inputs and generate human-like outputs. And computer vision is a whole thing. Sean and I just went to Automate 2025, which is a big conference in Detroit. You will never see so many robotic arms in one place in your life. It is insane. There are so many robots all over the place. There's robots that vacuum stuff up and robots that move stuff and robots that weld stuff. And it's just this huge automation conference. And so there's a lot of computer vision there. And then natural language processing is actually like a large field, and LLMs are like part of the whole like NLP thing. But my point here is that what we know and think of as AI, we are only really utilizing effectively. It's like the tip of the iceberg, right? We're only really using that as effectively because it's accessible now. Right? It's accessible to the everyday business owner who jumps on ChatGPT and can put in some text. But my point is really that AI is going to change so many things in so many ways that we aren't even going to be able to see, from logistics to manufacturing to imaging to all this other stuff. And you guys know most of that stuff. I just want to let you know that what we are experiencing is the tip of the iceberg. So I wanted to talk a little bit about how LLMs specifically actually work, because this will help us understand a lot of the things that we talk about later. So basically, when ChatGPT first came out, it was like this magical experience, right? I remember taking it to a dinner that my wife and I had with like another couple, and I had just seen it, and I was like, wow. This is what I knew this was coming. This is crazy. And I remember just saying to the guy we were having dinner with, I was like, hey, man, check this out. I'm gonna have it write a story. Write me a story about, I think I was like giraffes who, a lonely giraffe who doesn't like his hat, and so it was something ridiculous, right? Like that, and he has a friend who's an octopus or something, and it just spit out this story, and I was like, check it out, and he was like, oh, that's a cool trick, and I was like, no, this will change the whole world, and it was just this weird moment of realizing that wow, some people don't realize like what a fundamental shift in the world just happened. You know, nothing's ever going to be the same again. And just like you remember when Roger Bannister broke, you don't remember because it was a long time ago, he broke the 4-minute mile, and no one had ever run a 4-minute mile before. And then all of a sudden, by the next year or two, all kinds of people had run a 4-minute mile because somebody proved it was possible. Well, OpenAI with ChatGPT came along, they proved it was possible, and now everybody's absolutely hammering on this, this AI data thing, and they're all succeeding. They're succeeding at creating all these incredible models. If you watch Google's I/O conference, they talk about a lot of stuff that's really interesting that they're working on. What they really want to do is they want to do like glasses, right? So you're wearing glasses and you can walk around and interact with the world and be like, the demo they gave, a person walked up to like a breaker box and was like, "Oh, I got a package," and the AI said, "No, that's not a package, that's a breaker box," or something like that, right? Which is pretty cool. So being able to like interact with things like that in real time, in real life, will be pretty cool when that's available. But how LLMs actually work. So essentially what an LLM does is when you type something into it, and this will explain why ChatGPT and Gemini and Grok and all that, they work in any human language that is known, right? You can use any language, it doesn't matter. You could add a new language to it super easily. What was hard before is no problem now. So first off, they encode the prompt. So you write a prompt, they start encoding it. Basically, they are breaking that input into a ton of tokens, and then they're converting the tokens into vectors, which are basically like number arrays. So they take what you wrote and they break it down into as many, like literally millions of components as they possibly can, and they map it. So then they basically, number two, they are actually building context with like attention weight. So they are comparing every word in your entire prompt to every other word in your entire prompt and assigning weights. So, you know, the word "the" might not get that much importance, but, you know, if you say logistics industry, oh, we're going to weight that pretty highly because that's a unique word and it's specific. So they're assigning important scores between tokens. They're using all sorts of criteria to identify things. And then they are basically predicting the next token and repeating that process. So they're predicting the next token, they're comparing everything to their original training data. So they're comparing your prompts and your training data, and they're just repeating until they estimate that they have completed enough of the process to satisfy the request, right? So then they are generating the final response. So we now have all the data at this point, right? So you got your prompt, you got your weighting, you got your data, and now you get the final response. And that's where your tokens are basically combined into like a final full sentence. And the result is this response that feels really, really human. So I don't know if you saw the old movie with Will Smith. What's the movie with Will Smith where there's robots?
I, Robot.
Ah, thank you. Yes. So there was the one robot who was like, or he said, I think he said at some point like, "Hey, can a robot write a symphony? Can a robot paint a painting? Can a robot?" Yeah, they totally can now. And they can do it with mathematical probability, because it turns out you can break a painting or text or whatever into mathematical weights, and you can emulate and generate output based on that. So AI is really just our term for when a machine can mimic human behavior convincingly. Now, there are a lot of people who say, oh, well, LLMs are like stochastic parrots, right? They're basically just like parroting out and mimicking information, and they require training data up front, right? Well, that's true to an extent, but what people are failing to consider, and this is where things are going to get really crazy, what people are failing to consider is that the learning process and the process of creativity itself are actually processes, and they can be mathematically weighted and they can be emulated. So it could get a lot crazier. It's not limited to just this sort of thing. But I want you to understand what's going on here. It is a probabilistic determination, right? And so what that means is that what you are getting is just mathematically most likely the correct answer mathematically most likely, a mathematically generated output. I'm not even going to say correct. And the reason I'm shying away from saying correct is because it's just the generated answer, right? When they first came out with like the AI results, who remembers when they had, like, you open Google one day and all of a sudden it give you this little AI result at the top and you're like, oh my goodness, this is crazy. And it was pretty bad for a while. Early on, if you typed in like any phrase, you could make up a ridiculous phrase like, who knows, like sunshine the color of mustard or whatever. You could just make something up and you could put meaning at the end and it would like scramble and be like, here's what that phrase means. And it didn't mean anything. It just was determining mathematically the closest possible output, right? So we'll talk about that in a second. But I do want to quickly give you a little rundown of like major AI tools that I think are really like useful. And this list is subject to change. Like, I'm pretty sure in like a month, this list is going to be different. And in like 2 months, this list will be completely different. In a year, who knows if any of these will still be around? Probably they will, because there's a lot of money being thrown into them. But so ChatGPT, everybody knows about ChatGPT. Okay, real quick, raise your hand if you've heard of any of these as I go. Okay, ChatGPT. Obviously, everybody's heard of that. It's a great multi-purpose go-to LLM system. There's no way all of you haven't used that. I'm sure you've used it. Gemini. Okay, yeah, so that's Google's AI. So it's pretty good at coding, I would say. It's a good multi-purpose go-to. It's a competitor to ChatGPT. Perplexity. Who's heard of Perplexity? Okay, so Perplexity is like, it's really good for search. It's like a replacement for Google. It's basically like a way better version of Google's like AI result, although they're trying to get that better all the time. Who's heard of Midjourney? Okay, Midjourney is, okay, my slide is wrong there. But Midjourney is an image generation system. It's basically like the world standard image generation. 11 Labs. Who's heard of 11 Labs? Okay, you've heard of a lot of these. This is great. So it's voice emulation based on training modules. So basically, if you give it samples of your voice, you could have it read your audiobook or something like that, right? That's a really good one. HeyGen is video avatar generation based on models. So you could use one of their stock models and generate talking video, or you could, just give it, like, your own video and say like emulate this. You could build a model off of yourself, basically. We'll talk about that in a minute because that's really interesting. Copilot. Who's heard of Copilot? Okay, I use Copilot all the time. It's integrated with Visual Studio Code, which Visual Studio Code is Microsoft's like de facto code editor, which is pretty much the code editor that like most developers are using at this point. I call it coding autocomplete because it's like okay, but it's not that great compared to like ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude. I can't believe I didn't put Claude on this list, but I only had, 9 spaces. And I picked Perplexity for Anthropic's version. And Claude is a very good coder. So I would definitely also think about Claude. But I call Copilot coding autocomplete because it's not that great, but it's helpful if you're like writing a little loop and you want it to finish it for you. Grok is X's AI. Everybody's heard of Grok, I assume. Yeah. So X or Twitter, Elon Musk's AI, basically. It's a very direct, uncensored AI. So if you just want really direct responses, that's a good one. It's a multi-purpose go-to competitor to ChatGPT and Gemini. And then Runway is like video and image generation, really, with generative AI. So those are a few major AI tools that we want to talk about. Okay, so I want to talk real quick about the cycle of technology. And to do that, I'm actually going to take a minute. I'm going to pull this up on my LinkedIn because I think just reading this post, I did not write this post with AI. I wrote it with a lot of humanity. And so I really, really, really strongly considered what I wrote here. And now that I say that, I'm logged out of my LinkedIn. Sean, you want to pull up my LinkedIn and grab that post that I wrote about? Thank you. That's amazing. The one about, it's like 6 or... Oh, he knows. All right. It's a favorite of mine. But I want to talk about the cycle of technology a little bit. So, Sean's just the AI. You know how you can invite an AI to meetings? Sean's my AI. Thank you. Yeah, walk as robotically as possible, please. Thank you.
The uncensored AI.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, all right. So I made a slide about this, but I'll just read it. Part of our value processing mechanism is an attraction to things that are difficult to attain and maintain. We're attracted to wealth, fitness, athleticism, compelling storytelling, gorgeous designs, creative music, because they are difficult. These difficult things represent overcoming, a trait that ensures survival and progress. Biologically, we recognize that we want our progeny to benefit from exceptional opportunity born out of exceptional effort. So we desire to mate with and surround ourselves with those who are doing things that are exceptional, read, difficult to attain. Technology has raced to make difficult things easy, and it inevitably succeeds. It was hard to get a message from New York to Atlanta. Now it is easy. It was hard to write a coherent, grammatically correct paper on the Industrial Revolution. Now it's easy. The irony is that the promise of technology is that we can attract others by using this technology. You can create the same attractive, remarkable results, but it'll be easy for you. They will be just as impressed, but you will have to put in very little effort. In a nutshell, this is the story told and sold by most technology products. That's the underlying story, right? The funny thing is that this begins a cycle. As new technology comes about, it actually does deliver on its promise. Early adopters are able to flash the same results that other people were getting with massive effort, and the attraction really is there. But over time, that technology becomes ubiquitous, and people realize how easy it actually is. Then its luster is lost. It's no longer valuable or attractive. No one marvels. And so, as each shiny new piece of technology ushers in an easy way to do things we used to find difficult/attractive, the value of that output is lost in our eyes. The next time you dream about something that is currently difficult becoming easy, just remember, once it is, it will no longer be seen as valuable. Thank you, Sean. So,
Are you getting a good text from my wife?
Yeah, I did. You did. So yeah, that's the cycle. Like we value things because there's effort put into them. That's how we ascribe value to stuff. Technology promises to get us that value with less effort. That comes true for some early adopters of working technology that doesn't really work well, meaning like, okay, people find it kind of challenging or clunky to use, or it just doesn't really get mass adoption or whatever, just dies. And then the technology that does work pretty well becomes ubiquitous. Everybody starts using it. The results are no longer seen as effortful, so they're no longer valued. And only effort taking into account the new technology is valued. And so people ask all the time, well, what will be valuable in the age of AI and the post-AI age, right? Whatever is difficult. Whatever is difficult is going to be valuable. So it might be handwritten letters. It might be personal conversations. It might be meetings like this where you have to actually drive to get there, stuff like that. I think authenticity, like real authenticity, is going to be very valuable because you can create or generate all the other stuff. So this is a couple things that I think are very interesting. Everything in the age of AI becomes easier, but it goes faster, right? So if you've ever noticed that you ask somebody how they're doing, they say, oh, I'm pretty busy, right? And they're saying that more and more. Like people, like probably 50% of people say that when I ask them how they're doing these days, right? And they are so exhausted and so busy all the time because the input that's coming at them constantly, asking them for output, is so fast. So the rate of change, so I got this from a biologist, a human biologist. The rate of change is outpacing our ability to adapt, right? So we have been required to adapt and adapt and adapt. And so what's really interesting about this time period is for all the rest of human history, you have been able to sort of say with some level of certainty, oh, I'm probably going to do something similar to what my parents did, right? My parents were blacksmiths. I'm probably going to be a blacksmith. Or maybe I'll do one of the things I've seen my friends' parents do, right? So we could train our kids in such a way as like, oh, here's how you live, right? Here's how you invest. Here's how you work. Here's how you do stuff. These are the principles. These are the actual mechanics. We don't really know the mechanics of success for our kids at this point. And certainly Gen Alpha, they don't know at all what the mechanics of success will look like for the next generation after that. So it makes it very interesting. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later, but I wanted to talk about the cycle of technology as a background framework for everything else we're going to talk about. All right, so also I want to talk about the old world versus the new world, okay? So the old world is almost gone. There are just glimmers of it left, but it's almost gone. It was stable. I come in and do what I am supposed to do, therefore my output is valuable, right? I was told what I'm supposed to do. I have a job description. I come in, I fulfill that job description. My output is valuable, therefore I am rewarded and compensated for that value. That's the old way. That's stability. Now, the new age, fluid. I decide and I figure out what I'm going to do, what I want to see, what I want to happen, and then I pilot probably AI agents to do it, right? So you're a little bit more of an orchestrator, less so a doer of things, and more of an orchestrator of things, right? So it's fluid, stable to fluid. So we're kind of going from the crop picker, who is like actually picking crops or tilling a field or whatever. I picked apples as one of my first jobs, so then now the owner and programmers of the combine create value, right? So you have a combine, it goes out and it harvests the fields, and there's value because, their combine is getting stuff done. Now we're going to this new space where the owner and controller of the combines, right? So there might be quite a few of them doing the work, is valuable, but not really anybody else. And so in the age of complex systems, you can't blueprint a system, right? Because as soon as you do, it can just be copied and extrapolated, right? GPE. So the old world is can you learn? The new world is can you learn, unlearn, and relearn? And how many times can you do that? How flexible are you? How neuroplastic are you? So it's all about that cycle of learning, unlearning, and relearning relatively quickly. All right, so one thing I want to highlight too, teaching you how to use AI with a PowerPoint like I'm doing now is like making a slideshow on how to play Mario Kart. This thing is useless. It's about feel. You actually have to go play. So all of you, who has played with an AI tool in the last 20 days, last 2 weeks or whatever? Okay, great. Do it more. Do it a lot. Try different tools. Try different things. Just because you have to know what's in your toolkit. You have to know what is available to you so that you know where you could plug those solutions in. So I highly recommend, I saw a couple of you take photos of that slide of the different tools. Try all of them. Give all of them a test drive. So just take a Saturday and do it. All right, so let's get into some questions. Thank you guys for entering questions, by the way. That was awesome. Who submitted questions? Like quite a few of you did, and I appreciate it. So I divided them into 3 categories. So first off, personal bias and output, sensitive and personal data, and then using AI to automate processes. So I'll just talk about each of those things, and then we can do some questions and stuff like that. So in terms of personal bias and output, this was a very interesting conversation. Was it somebody in here who submitted the conversation they had with, I think it was ChatGPT, about like God?
That was Andy.
Okay. Yeah. So that was a very interesting conversation. He was sort of just asking AI about how it thinks about God and evidence for God and how it processes which God to follow and all that sort of thing, right? And so his question was related to, and it was a very human, very interesting conversation with a lot of philosophy behind it. It was fascinating. His question was really in regards to like, wait a minute, if somebody somewhere else, let's say someone, so we're in a English speaking, I mean, he's using English, right, in the tool. English is spoken a lot in the US. We primarily have a large Christian demographic in the US, right? Christian, Catholic, all that sort of thing. And so his question was, if I go to a Muslim region and I am, asking questions of ChatGPT in Arabic, right? Like, am I going to get more Muslim-leaning answers, like, Allah instead of the Christian God or something like that, right? And the answer is yes, totally. So first off, remember that AI is basically a mathematical probability outputter. So to an extent, the value of that conversation that he had, though it was very deep and meaningful for him, the value is effectively almost zero, right? It's a probabilistic output based on three things. AI, and I'm largely talking about LLMs here, right? LLMs produce data using a mix of their training data, that's their foundational knowledge, that's the largest influence. When ChatGPT came out, there was all sorts of controversy about how they had actually produced their training data, because basically they had forced a lot of people to process a lot of training data manually very fast. And some of those people had a really hard time with some of that data because part of what they were actually asking the people to review was negative data, like very disturbing content, the most disturbing content on the internet, which was basically given to the AI to say, this is the furthest example of what we don't want you to do, right? Like, this is a perfect example of what we don't want you to do. Well, the perfect examples of what you don't want an AI to do is the most depraved content on the entire internet. And so people who were exposed to that for a long time while training the AI models had a very, very, very difficult time psychologically. It was very, very difficult for them. But that's just a reminder that the foundational knowledge is the training data, right? So it is a little bit of a garbage in, garbage out scenario. And we can talk a little bit more about that. But definitely personal preferences are a very high priority. Yes, the AI LLMs talk differently to different people. They do have memory built in now that remembers some of your preferences and things like that. And also the cadence, the speech, the prompts you use, all that sort of thing. You might not recognize it, but the way that you ask questions, even using God instead of Allah, right? Hopefully I'm pronouncing that right, does influence your output. So you have to realize that AI and LLMs are not a substitute for a brain, and they're also not a substitute for experience, right? An AI cannot walk out and touch a tree. An AI cannot pray and process what's going on in its brain, right? So and in its heart or soul or whatever all the other things we have, right? So that is one thing that is coming next, by the way. I do think that the next level of training will be actually sending robots with senses out to be able to try to experience the world, so they have a little bit more of a beyond cognitive experience of what the world is like, right? So that's going to be one of the next things. But training data, definitely huge. Personal preferences, high priority, and then it also supplementally uses a web browsing tool. So it's going to try to conserve on energy and on processing power and just use training data if it can. But if it sort of is mathematically likely to need some more info, it will go browse the web and try to get information. I actually thought, and I was wrong about this, I thought that as soon as ChatGPT was able to access the internet, the world would be cooked. And they let it, and we're still hanging in there. So you never know. Before I move on, any quick questions about personal bias in AI? Not all at once, thank you. No, go ahead. What you got?
Is the exporter working from one LLM to the other?
No, I mean,
Bummer.
Kind of. You can try it.
Okay.
Yeah, kind of. Okay, so real quick, another thing that I want to talk about. So sensitive data. So when you have, this is actually a huge problem that I think is going to need to get solved pretty soon. I have an idea that I am very excited about for solving it. And talk to me about that afterwards. So I'm not going to put it on video yet. But a lot of people paste a lot of stuff into ChatGPT. A lot of people paste a lot of stuff into Gemini. A lot of technically, those companies are secure in the same sense that like going and putting your information in like Slack, if you use Slack for work, or Google Docs or whatever, is secure, right? But I do think that one of the things that is a little bit of a higher concern with AI is it does talk to a lot of people, and it's not really policed in how it talks to a lot of people. So the chances of like it taking something and being like, oh, I did get some data about that, here you go, to someone you don't want it to do that to is fairly high, right? Like let's say you put in an API key for an application, and then another programmer comes along later. It's like, oh, I have an API key for you to use. That's possible, right? It's totally possible that you put in a client's information about a legal situation that you have, and the opposing side is also using ChatGPT to work on the legal defense, and it just like gives them the information. I guess that's possible, right? So it's those sorts of things that people really worry about. And so I would say with sensitive data, my personal practice is I will replace sensitive data with sample data. Okay, so if I have an API key, I'll just put API token or whatever in instead. If I have a first name, I'll change the first name to something else, stuff like that. I've been getting more and more paranoid about it, actually. But I do a lot of that replacement manually. Another suggestion that I have, if you're working with a lot of sample documents, find a local LLM. So a local LLM is going to be one that just runs on your own machine. You can run a lot of local LLMs on your own machine. And basically what you do is you just give it your document. You give it your legal document and you say, hey, can you replace any specific references to people, places, things, all that sort of thing. Replace it with just John Smith or these values, right? Have it do the scrub and replace and give you the values. Ask it to give you the values it replaced, right? So this guy generates way north of 1,000 videos a month. So he's doing short form videos and stuff like that. Who saw Google's I think I asked earlier, I/O conference or whatever? Oh my goodness, watch the I/O conference. Thank you, Sean. You literally work in the industry. So within 30 minutes of their video going live of the conference, he had an overview video out, fully edited, ready to go. It was incredible. So I watched him for a while and was very impressed by his videos before I realized that most of his videos, he's not actually talking, he's an AI. Blew my mind. Blew my mind. Have you seen Arnold's Pump Club at all? Arnold Schwarzenegger's Pump Club? I'm a big fan of Arnold Schwarzenegger. I just saw him live recently. So, I followed his like Pump Club thing where he's like, oh, I'll give you like workout tips and there's a podcast and all that. I listened to the podcast. I read the emails. I didn't realize he never made any of that content. It's all AI. I had no idea. It's crazy. So, but this is what Varun does. And I couldn't tell. I couldn't tell at all. So over 1,000 videos a month. So he starts out doing his script generation. He uses ChatGPT for sure. I think he plays with all the like AI platforms and all that. So then he uses 11 Labs, which we talked about earlier, right, to do voice simulation, and he gets the audio that he wants. And then he uses HeyGen. He actually has a really, really, really carefully tuned model that he uses with HeyGen, and he will generate all his video. He will put himself in different scenarios. So if he's like talking about Mars, he'll be like on Mars, and I thought he just like shot on a green screen, but apparently not. And then for editing, he has a team of human editors. By the way, Paulina there, very good video editor if you need video editing. He also uses like Flux and Runway and things like that to generate all the content that gets put in here. So that's his process. Now, I want you to notice two things about this process, right? First off, how many used to be complicated tasks he's taking and he's making faster, right? He has made so many of these tasks faster. But the number two thing I want you to notice is this is not an easy button. This is a very complicated system that he's built with a lot of stuff going on, right? And that is the new way of the world. A lot of easy buttons, but man, you got to figure out how to tie them all together and get all the systems to work. So this is a system that, I'm probably going to try something like this myself and just, see if I can get that done. But it's a really interesting thing. So I did want to share a couple quick principles for using AI LLMs effectively. These are basically the four things. If you're going to take a picture of any slide, this is the slide to take a picture of, by the way. So to use an AI LLM effectively to get the best possible output. Number one, role. Tell it what role it should play. You are a technically savvy marketer writing content for a new website. You are a highly trained orthopedic surgeon. Give it the role it should play so that it starts to sub-select from the sample set of data that is created by people in that role. Secondarily, give it context about your goal. Don't just say, can you replace the lorem ipsum in here? Give it some context about what you're trying to do. We are creating a new website for this orthopedic company. We want to really emphasize these three things. We want to blah, 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 blah. Give it as much context as you can give it. Format. Tell it exactly the format that you want your output in. This is really, really, really important. If you can give it an example of what is good, that's really powerful. Example. Yeah, give it an example of what a good output actually looks like. Now, I want to give you my easiest, most broadly applicable example here. So I run two companies. One company is Emberly, and Emberly has like an in-house admin who is incredible. She's one of our partners who does our internal accounting. And then we have like an external tax person accountant, and then we have payroll and all that sort of thing. So between all of them, all of that is figured out. But I have a second business that is messy and disorganized called my rental properties. I have one rental property that's LTR in Lowell, and I have one STR in Florida, in Deerfield Beach. That is a little bit of a problem for me come tax time because there are a lot of receipts, which a lot of you have run into that, right? So a way I used AI in 2024 that was awesome, receipt itemization. For all of 2024, I took photos of every physical receipt that I ever got. I even took photos of receipts I just got by email because I'm like, I guess I'll just take a photo of that so I don't have to worry about it. I have it backed up to Google Photos. Google Photos has OCR, so optical content recognition, so it can rip the text out of a photo, and it has AI. So I can just search receipts, and there we go. I can get them all. So this is my actual conversation with ChatGPT. If I give you a zip file of receipt PDFs, are you able to get me a table with vendor description, location, date, cost? I don't have the ability to open or process files that you upload directly. However, if you provide the text to the receipts, I know that's a lie, right? I totally know it can get me. So I know I've already found a hallucination here. So I said, cool. I'm always really polite to AIs, by the way. And there's a reason that I'm very polite to AIs. Because when we put input into an AI, we are building the world that we will have in 10 years, right? It will emulate us. So I try to be polite and enthusiastic and hopeful because that's what I want the AIs to emulate, right? Also, if they take over the world, they might be like, well, leave him. He said thank you. He was really nice. Yeah, quick, merciful death for Cameron. Yes. So I said, cool, what if I give you screenshots of them? I'm sorry, I can't, blah, blah, blah. So I said, here's a screenshot. How about this one? Boom! There's my line item summary, okay? So I then started giving it groupings of screenshots. And then I gave it more screenshots. So I gave it the output that I wanted, right? I didn't give it a lot of context, so I wasn't perfect about this prompt. But I got exactly what I wanted here.
And these things, I want to point out something real quick here. Oh, we don't have it on here. I got a Diet Coke on here. You can't write off a Diet Coke, right? So it's like simple things like that that I was then able to ask. I was then able to ask the AI to say, hey, can you categorize these by location? Because I want you to put all the Deerfield Beach ones in one spreadsheet, and I want you to put all the Lowell ones in another spreadsheet. Okay, can you take out any items that aren't tax deductible, right? So that was an easy way for me. It took me like 30 minutes, and I was like, okay, I got them all. And then to my wife, she was like, oh, we got to get these taxes done for the rental properties. I was like, I made a couple spreadsheets. It was really hard. So early adopter type of thing, right? So that is a really quick and easy example. So we recently had a situation where, so this was just a project that we just wrapped up yesterday. We basically had a political petition that went out, and they had gotten physical signatures. Every tech guy's worst nightmare. A lot of physical signatures from people who wrote their name and address and email and all that stuff on the sheet. And there were, I believe it was like 984 pages of it. And so this organization came to us and was like, hi, can you help us get this all out? So we tried all sorts of stuff. We tried like AWS technology, we tried this, we tried that. The easiest thing to do was literally just to take it, 10 at a time and just screenshot them, paste them into ChatGPT, and get the OCR output. And so we gave it exactly the spreadsheet format we gave it exactly that spreadsheet format that we wanted, and then we just compiled a spreadsheet. So we had a manual person running through and using that for that time period. So so generally speaking, a lot of stuff is changing in the age of AI. For you guys, I think the most important thing, the most important thing for everyone, a lot of this is causing extreme uncertainty, right? Like I said, we don't know what the world is going to look like for the next generation. The next generation has even less idea of what the world is going to look like after that. And so the ground is shifting beneath us, right? And so one of the things that does is it makes conversations about the sanctity of life and about what really matters, what value human beings really have beyond their productivity. When the type of work that you do right now is automated in the next generation, what is your value? And a lot of people are facing an existential crisis because they only see themselves as valuable because of their output. AI is forcing us to look in the mirror. It is forcing us to have conversations about human value and to understand what makes us human. And I think that's actually a very beautiful thing. So if you think about the 6 things that humans need, Tony Robbins has that whole thing about the 6 things that humans need. We need stability, we need, ironically, variety, we need progress, we need contribution, we need significance, and we need one more thing that's probably not that important. But what is happening is a lot of our stability that we feel as stability is being eroded, right? And so when you look at doing business in the next generation, realize that you are doing business with people who are scared and unmoored and unanchored, right? And that's the type of people that the next generation is doing business with, and giving them hope and placing value on them and telling them that there is value in being human, connecting them spiritually. Those are things that are valuable and will continue to be valuable, especially when everything else is unmoored. So that's something I think is really important. So I'm actually very hopeful for this, because if we go into it understanding that, hey, this is forcing us to look in the mirror. This is forcing us to actually place our trust in things that are worth trusting, not just things that, were substitutes for good trust. I think that, there's 2 ways you can go with that. You can despair, or you can be very, very hopeful. And I'm very, very hopeful in the midst of that. So anyway, that's some stuff I wanted to say.